All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a really chaotic, formative, and just absolutely fascinating period of English history.
So you've probably heard of the epic Warring States period in China, right? You know, this time of just brutal conflict that ended up forging an entire empire? Well, what if I told you that England had its very own version of that story?
Yeah, this era is known as the Heptarchy. And it all kicks off when the Roman Empire, which you gotta remember, had been ruling Britain for almost 400 years, basically just packs up and leaves in 410 AD. And when they go, they leave behind this huge power vacuum on the island.
So, you've got this power vacuum, and right into it storms this first wave of conquerors. And believe me, this is a wave that would forever, and I mean forever, change the destiny of the island. Okay, so who were these people? Well, they were mainly three powerful Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. They all crossed the sea looking for new lands to settle. But here's what's really cool. These distinct groups, over time, they actually started to merge. They forged this new shared identity, and they became the people we now know as the Anglo-Saxons.
And look, they didn't just move in peacefully. No way. They conquered. They pushed the native Celtic Britons out to the fringes of the island, basically into what we now call Wales and Scotland. And here's the kicker. It's from this one really dominant tribe, the Angles, that England gets its name. England. Makes sense, right?
All right, so let's get to the heart of this whole warring states idea. Let's really look at how this fierce competition between these newcomers literally carved up the country.
So after a whole lot of bloody fighting and consolidation, 7 major kingdoms finally emerged. And these 7, you see them here, Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, all of them, they were constantly at each other's throats, all vying for power and influence. And that, right there, is the Heptarchy.
And you can actually see how the origins of these kingdoms are tied directly back to those original invading tribes. The Angles, they founded the big, powerful kingdoms in the north and the center. The Saxons totally dominated the south. And the Jutes, well, they carved out their key foothold down in Kent.
And this is where that incredible parallel really clicks into place. See, the most powerful king among them all was recognized by the others with this special title, the Bret Walda. He was basically an over-king who held sway over everyone else. And that role, it is strikingly similar to the powerful hegemons you see in ancient China. Just a fascinating connection.
But, you know, it wasn't all about warfare. Something else huge was happening. A profound cultural shift was underway. We're talking about the spread of Christianity. And it was coming from 2 directions at once, Roman missionaries from the south and Irish missionaries from the north. This new religion, it would eventually become this incredibly powerful unifying force, giving all these warring kingdoms a common identity that went way beyond the battlefield.
So just as these kingdoms are starting to forge these new identities, finding this shared faith, a brand new, absolutely terrifying threat appears from the sea. And it kind of feels like history's about to repeat itself, doesn't it?
And this is where you get this incredible dose of historical irony. Think about it. The Anglo-Saxons, the very same people who showed up as pagan invaders just a few centuries before, well, now they found themselves as Christian defenders. They were defending their homeland against a brand new wave of pagan invaders, the Vikings.
Then, in 865 AD, things got really serious. The threat just escalated dramatically with the arrival of what the Anglo-Saxons called the Great Heathen Army. This wasn't just a raiding party. Oh no, this was a massive Viking force, and they were here for permanent conquest. And they just swept through the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms like a storm. I mean, they took complete control of the north and the east of England. And they didn't just conquer it, they settled it. They established their own society with their own laws in this huge territory that came to be known as the Danelaw.
So with all the northern kingdoms collapsing one after the other, it really looked like the Anglo-Saxon story was over. It seemed like game over. But way down in the southern kingdom of Wessex, one man rose up to meet this unbelievable challenge.
His name was Alfred of Wessex. And he's actually the only English monarch in history to be called the Great. I mean, this guy was hunted, he was cornered, his kingdom was on the absolute brink of collapse, and he just flat out refused to be conquered. Instead, he led this fierce, almost desperate resistance against the Viking onslaught.
And Alfred's strategy, his vision,
It was just remarkable. He didn't just fight. You see, he built. Yeah, he defeated the Vikings in a decisive battle, but then he secured a treaty that officially created the Danelaw, basically dividing England. But he didn't stop there. He went even further, founding England's first navy to counter the Vikings at sea. And, maybe most importantly, he championed culture and learning, promoting his own language, Old English, to preserve the very soul of his people.
So Alfred saved his kingdom. He absolutely laid the groundwork for what would become a unified England. But the Age of Invasions, it wasn't quite over yet. There was one final decisive wave still to come.
1066. I mean, it's one of the most famous dates in all of history, right? And in a truly epic twist of fate, the very last Anglo-Saxon king, a guy named Harold Godwinson, would have to face not one, but two invasions at the exact same time.
So first, he pulls off this stunning victory. He completely repels a massive Norwegian Viking invasion up in the north at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. An incredible win. But there was literally no time to celebrate, because just days later he gets word that there's another invasion. This forces Harold and his already exhausted army on this grueling, non-stop march, hundreds of miles south to defend the coast.
And who was it this time? William, the Duke of Normandy. And get this, he was a descendant of Vikings who had settled in France centuries earlier. He had landed his army on the south coast, and so the two armies clashed at the now legendary Battle of Hastings.
King Harold was killed in the battle. His army was defeated. And just like that, with his death, the 600-year-old Anglo-Saxon dynasty came to a sudden, violent, and dramatic end.
So, after 600 years of warring kingdoms, waves of invasions, Viking raids, Norman conquerors, what was left? What did the Anglo-Saxons actually leave behind? What's the big takeaway from all this?
Well, the truth is, their legacy is pretty much all around us. It was the Anglo-Saxons who gave the country its name, England, from Angleland. They gave us the very foundation of the English language. They created the whole idea of a unified kingdom with established laws and counties. You know, the Norman conquest didn't just erase their world. Not at all. It built on top of it, blending with it, to create the complex, resilient, and fascinating country that we know today.